Iceland. Iceland is a Nordic island country in the North Atlantic, with a population of 364,134 and an area of 103,000 square kilometers, 40,000 square miles, making it the most sparsely populated country in Europe. The capital and largest city is Reykjavik. Reykjavik and the surrounding areas in the southwest of the country are home to over two-thirds of the population. Iceland is volcanically and geologically active. The interior consists of a plateau characterized by sand and lava fields, mountains, and glaciers, and many glacial rivers flow to the sea through the lowlands. Iceland is warmed by the Gulf Stream and has a temperate climate, despite a high latitude just outside the Arctic Circle. Its high latitude and marine influence keep summers chilly, with most of the archipelago having a polar climate. According to the ancient manuscript Landnámabók, the settlement of Iceland began in 874 AD when the Norwegian chieftain Ingolfur Arnarson became the first permanent settler on the island. In the following centuries, Norwegians, and to a lesser extent other Scandinavians immigrated to Iceland, bringing with them thralls, i.e., slaves or serfs, of Gaelic origin. The island was governed as an independent commonwealth under the Althing, one of the world's oldest functioning legislative assemblies. Following a period of civil strife, Iceland acceded to Norwegian rule in the 13th century. The establishment of the Kalmar Union in 1397 united the kingdoms of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Iceland thus followed Norway's integration into that union, coming under Danish rule after Sweden's secession from the Union in 1523. Although the Danish kingdom introduced Lutheranism forcefully in 1550, Iceland remained a distant semi-colonial territory in which Danish institutions and infrastructures were conspicuous by their absence. In the wake of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, Iceland's struggle for independence took form and culminated in independence in 1918 and the founding of a republic in 1944. Although its parliament Althing was suspended from 1799 to 1845, the island republic has been credited with sustaining the world's oldest and longest-running parliament. Until the 20th century, Iceland relied largely on subsistence fishing and agriculture. Industrialization of the fisheries and Marshall Plan aid following World War II brought prosperity, and Iceland became one of the wealthiest and most developed nations in the world. In 1994, it became a part of the European Economic Area, which further diversified the economy into sectors such as finance, biotechnology, and manufacturing. Iceland has a market economy with relatively low taxes, compared to other OECD countries, as well as the highest trade union membership in the world. It maintains a Nordic social welfare system that provides universal health care and tertiary education for its citizens. Iceland ranks high in economic, democratic, social stability, and equality, currently ranking third in the world by median wealth per adult. In 2018, it was ranked as the sixth most developed country in the world by the United Nations Human Development Index, and it ranks first on the Global Peace Index. Iceland runs almost completely on renewable energy. Hit hard by the worldwide financial crisis, the nation's entire banking system systemically failed in October 2008, leading to severe depression, substantial political unrest, the IceSave dispute, and the institution of capital controls. Some bankers were jailed. Since then, the economy has made a significant recovery, in large part due to a surge in tourism. Icelandic culture is founded upon the nation's Scandinavian heritage. Most Icelanders are descendants of Norse and Gaelic settlers. Icelandic, a North Germanic language, is descended from Old West Norse and is closely related to Faroese. The country's cultural heritage includes traditional Icelandic cuisine, Icelandic literature, and medieval sagas. Iceland has the smallest population of any NATO member and is the only one with no standing army, with a lightly armed coast guard. Etymology of Iceland. The sagas of Icelanders say that a Norwegian named Nadod, or Nadador, was the first Norseman to reach Iceland, and in the 9th century, he named it Snaland or Snowland because it was snowing. Following Nadod, the Swede Gerar Swawersson arrived, and so the island was then called Gararshomur, which means Gerar's Isle. Then came a Viking named Floki Vilgerarsson, his daughter drowned en route, then his livestock starved to death. The sagas say that the rather despondent Floki climbed a mountain and saw a fjord, Arnarfjörður, full of icebergs, which led him to give the island its new and present name. The notion that Iceland's Viking settlers chose that name to discourage oversettlement of their verdant isle is a myth. History of Iceland. According to both Landnámabók and Íslendingabók, monks known as the Papar lived in Iceland before Scandinavian settlers arrived, possibly members of a Hiberno-Scottish mission. Recent archaeological excavations have revealed the ruins of a cabin in Hafnir on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Carbon dating indicates that it was abandoned sometime between 770 and 880. In 2016, archaeologists uncovered a longhouse in Stovafjörður that has been dated to as early as 800. Swedish Viking explorer Gerar Svawarsson was the first to circumnavigate Iceland in 870 and establish that it was an island. He stayed over winter and built a house in Húsavík. Gerar departed the following summer, but one of his men, Natfari, decided to stay behind with 2 slaves. Natfari settled in what is now known as Natfaravik, and he and his slaves became the first permanent residents of Iceland. The Norwegian Norse chieftain Ingolfur Arnarsson built his homestead in present-day Reykjavik in 874. Ingolfur was followed by many other emigrant settlers, largely Scandinavians and their thralls, many of whom were Irish or Scottish. By 930, most arable land on the island had been claimed. The Althing, a legislative and judicial assembly, was initiated to regulate the Icelandic Commonwealth. Lack of arable land also served as an impetus to the settlement of Greenland starting in 986. The period of these early settlements coincided with the medieval warm period when temperatures were similar to those of the early 20th century. At this time, about 25% of Iceland was covered with forest, compared to 1% in the present day. Christianity was adopted by consensus around 999–1000, although Norse paganism persisted among segments of the population for some years afterward. Geography of Iceland. Iceland is at the juncture of the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. The main island is entirely south of the Arctic Circle, which passes through the small Icelandic island of Grimsey off the main island's northern coast. The country lies between latitudes 63 and 68 degrees north, and longitudes 25 and 13 degrees west. Iceland is closer to continental Europe than to mainland North America, although it is closest to Greenland, 290 kilometers (180 miles), an island of North America. Iceland is generally included in Europe for geographical, historical, political, cultural, linguistic, and practical reasons. Geologically, the island includes parts of both continental plates. The closest bodies of land in Europe are the Faroe Islands, 420 kilometers (260 miles), January Mayan Island, 570 kilometers (350 miles), Shetland and the Outer Hebrides, both about 740 kilometers (460 miles), and the Scottish mainland and Orkney, both about 750 kilometers (470 miles). The nearest part of continental Europe is mainland Norway, about 970 kilometers (600 miles) away, while mainland North America is 2070 kilometers (1290 miles) away, at the northern tip of Labrador. Iceland is the world's 18th largest island and Europe's second largest island after Great Britain. The island of Ireland is third. The main island is 101,826 square kilometers (39,315 square miles), but the entire country is 103,000 square kilometers (40,000 square miles) in size, of which 62.7% is tundra. About 30 minor islands are in Iceland, including the lightly populated Grimsey and the Vestmannaeyjar archipelago. Lakes and glaciers cover 14.3% of its surface, only 23% is vegetated. The largest lakes are Orisvatn Reservoir, 83 to 88 square kilometers (32 to 34 square miles), and Ingvallavatn, 82 square kilometers (32 square miles). Other important lakes include Lagerflot and Mývatn. Jökulsárlón is the deepest lake, at 248 meters (814 feet). Geologically, Iceland is part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a ridge along which the oceanic crust spreads and forms a new oceanic crust. This part of the mid-ocean ridge is located above a mantle plume, causing Iceland to be subaerial, above the surface of the sea. The ridge marks the boundary between the Eurasian and North American plates, and Iceland was created by rifting and accretion through volcanism along the ridge. Climate of Iceland. The climate of Iceland's coast is subarctic. The warm North Atlantic current ensures generally higher annual temperatures than in most places of similar latitude in the world. Regions in the world with similar climates include the Aleutian Islands, the Alaska Peninsula, and Tierra del Fuego, although these regions are closer to the equator. Despite its proximity to the Arctic, the island's coasts remain ice-free through the winter. Ice incursions are rare, the last having occurred on the north coast in 1969. The climate varies between different parts of the island. Generally speaking, the south coast is warmer, wetter, and windier than the north. The Central Highlands are the coldest part of the country. Low-lying inland areas in the north are the aridest. Snowfall in winter is more common in the north than in the south. The highest air temperature recorded was 30.5 degrees Celsius (86.9 degrees Fahrenheit) on the 22nd of June 1939 at Tígarhorn on the southeastern coast. The lowest was -38 degrees Celsius (-36.4 degrees Fahrenheit) on the 22nd of January 1918 at Grimstad and Morudalur in the northeastern hinterland. The temperature records for Reykjavik are 26.2 degrees Celsius (79.2 degrees Fahrenheit) on the 30th of July 2008 and -24.5 degrees Celsius (-12.1 degrees Fahrenheit) on the 21st of January 1918. Politics of Iceland. Iceland has a left-right multi-party system. Following the 2017 parliamentary election, the biggest parties are the Centre-Right Independence Party, the Left Green Movement, and the Progressive Party. These three parties form the current ruling coalition in the cabinet led by a leftist. Other political parties with seats in the Althing Parliament are the Social Democratic Alliance, the Centre Party, Iceland's Pirates, the People's Party, and the Reform Party. In 2016, Iceland was ranked second in the strength of its democratic institutions and 13th in government transparency. The country has a high level of civic participation, with 81.4% voter turnout during the most recent elections, compared to an OECD average of 72%. However, only 50% of Icelanders say they trust their political institutions, slightly less than the OECD average of 56%, and most probably a consequence of the political scandals in the wake of the Icelandic financial crisis. Government of Iceland. Iceland is a representative democracy and a parliamentary republic. The modern parliament, Alþingi (English, Althing), was founded in 1845 as an advisory body to the Danish monarch. It was widely seen as a re-establishment of the assembly founded in 930 in the Commonwealth period and yet temporarily suspended from 1799 to 1845. Consequently, it is arguably the world's oldest parliamentary democracy. It currently has 63 members, elected for a maximum period of 4 years. The head of government is the Prime Minister who, together with the cabinet, is responsible for the executive government. The President, in contrast, is elected by popular vote for a term of 4 years with no term limit.
The elections for President, the Althing, and local municipal councils are all held separately every 4 years.
The President of Iceland is a largely ceremonial head of state and serves as a diplomat, but may veto laws voted by the parliament and put them to a national referendum. The current president is Guðni Th. Jóhannesson. In 1980, Icelanders elected Vigdís Finnbogadóttir as president, the world's first directly elected female head of state. She retired from office in 1996. In 2009, Iceland became the first country with an openly gay head of government when Jóhanna Sigurðardóttir became prime minister. Military of Iceland. Iceland has no standing army, but the Icelandic Coast Guard, which also maintains the Iceland Air Defence System, and an Iceland Crisis Response Unit to support peacekeeping missions and perform paramilitary functions. The Iceland Defence Force (IDF) was a military command of the United States Armed Forces from 1951 to 2006. The IDF, created at the request of NATO, came into existence when the United States signed an agreement to provide for the defense of Iceland. The IDF also consisted of civilian Icelanders and military members of other NATO nations. The IDF was downsized after the end of the Cold War, and the U.S. Air Force maintained 4 to 6 interceptor aircraft at the Naval Air Station Keflavik until they were withdrawn on 30 September 2006. Since May 2008, NATO nations have periodically deployed fighters to patrol Icelandic airspace under the Icelandic Air Policing Mission. Iceland supported the 2003 invasion of Iraq despite much domestic controversy, deploying a Coast Guard EOD team to Iraq, which was replaced later by members of the Iceland Crisis Response Unit. Iceland has also participated in the ongoing conflict in Afghanistan and the 1999 NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. Despite the ongoing financial crisis, the first new patrol ship in decades was launched on 29 April 2009. Economy of Iceland. In 2007, Iceland was the 7th most productive country in the world per capita, $54,858 United States dollars, and the 5th most productive by GDP at purchasing power parity, $40,112. About 85% of the total primary energy supply in Iceland is derived from domestically produced renewable energy sources. The use of abundant hydroelectric and geothermal power has made Iceland the world's largest electricity producer per capita. As a result of its commitment to renewable energy, the 2016 Global Green Economy Index ranked Iceland among the top 10 greenest economies in the world. Historically, Iceland's economy depended heavily on fishing, which still provides 40% of export earnings and employs 7% of the workforce. The economy is vulnerable to declining fish stocks and drops in world prices for its main material exports, fish and fish products, aluminum, and ferrosilicon. Whaling in Iceland has been historically significant. Iceland still relies heavily on fishing, but its importance is diminishing from an export share of 90% in the 1960s to 40% in 2006. Until the 20th century, Iceland was a fairly poor country. Currently, it remains one of the most developed countries in the world. Strong economic growth had led Iceland to be ranked first in the United Nations Human Development Index report for 2007-2008, although in 2011 its HDI rating had fallen to 14th place as a result of the economic crisis. Nevertheless, according to the Economist Intelligence Index of 2011, Iceland has the second highest quality of life in the world. Based on the Gini coefficient, Iceland also has one of the lowest rates of income inequality in the world, and when adjusted for inequality, its HDI ranking is 6th. Iceland's unemployment rate has declined consistently since the crisis, with 4.8% of the labor force being unemployed as of June 2012, compared to 6% in 2011 and 8.1% in 2010. Languages of Iceland. Iceland's official written and spoken language is Icelandic, a North Germanic language descended from Old Norse. In grammar and vocabulary, it has changed less from Old Norse than the other Nordic languages. Icelandic has preserved more verb and noun inflection and has to a considerable extent developed new vocabulary based on native roots rather than borrowings from other languages. The puristic tendency in the development of Icelandic vocabulary is to a large degree a result of conscious language planning, in addition to centuries of isolation. Icelandic is the only living language to retain the use of the runic letter in Latin script. The closest living relative of the Icelandic language is Faroese. Icelandic Sign Language was officially recognized as a minority language in 2011. In education, its use for Iceland's deaf community is regulated by the National Curriculum Guide. English and Danish are compulsory subjects in the school curriculum. English is widely understood and spoken, while basic to moderate knowledge of Danish is common mainly among the older generations. Polish is mostly spoken by the local Polish community, the largest minority of Iceland, and Danish is mostly spoken in a way largely comprehensible to Swedes and Norwegians. It is often referred to as Skandinavissa, i.e., Scandinavian, in Iceland. Culture of Iceland. Icelandic culture has its roots in North Germanic traditions. Icelandic literature is popular, in particular the sagas and eddas that were written during the High and Late Middle Ages. Centuries of isolation have helped to insulate the country's Nordic culture from external influence. A prominent example is the preservation of the Icelandic language, which remains the closest to Old Norse of all modern Nordic languages. In contrast to other Nordic countries, Icelanders place relatively great importance on independence and self-sufficiency. In a public opinion analysis conducted by the European Commission, over 85% of Icelanders believe independence is very important, compared to 47% of Norwegians, 49% of Danes, and an average of 53% for the EU 25. Icelanders also have a very strong work ethic, working some of the longest hours of any industrialized nation. According to a poll conducted by the OECD, 66% of Icelanders were satisfied with their lives, while 70% believed that their lives will be satisfying in the future. Similarly, 83% reported having more positive experiences in an average day than negative ones, compared to an OECD average of 72%, which makes Iceland one of the happiest countries in the OECD. A more recent 2012 survey found that around 3/4 of respondents stated they were satisfied with their lives, compared to a global average of about 53%. Education in Iceland. The Ministry of Education, Science, and Culture is responsible for the policies and methods that schools must use, and they issue the national curriculum guidelines. However, playschools, primary schools, and lower secondary schools are funded and administered by the municipalities. The government does allow citizens to home educate their children, however under a very strict set of demands. Students must adhere closely to the government-mandated curriculum, and the parent teaching must acquire a government-approved teaching certificate. Nursery school, or leikskóli, is non-compulsory education for children younger than 6 years and is the first step in the education system. The current legislation concerning playschools was passed in 1994. They are also responsible for ensuring that the curriculum is suitable so as to make the transition into compulsory education as easy as possible. Compulsory education, or grunnskóli, comprises primary and lower secondary education, which often is conducted at the same institution. Education is mandatory by law for children aged from 6 to 16 years. The school year lasts 9 months, beginning between the 21st of August and the 1st of September, ending between the 31st of May and the 10th of June. The minimum number of school days was once 170, but after a new teacher's wage contract, it increased to 180. Lessons take place 5 days a week. All public schools have mandatory education in Christianity, although an exemption may be considered by the Minister of Education. Sport in Iceland. Sport is an important part of Icelandic culture, as the population is generally quite active. The main traditional sport in Iceland is glima, a form of wrestling thought to have originated in medieval times. Popular sports include football, track and field, handball and basketball. Handball is often referred to as the national sport. The Icelandic national football team qualified for the 2016 UEFA European Football Championship for the first time. They recorded a draw against later winners Portugal in the group stage, and defeated England 2-1 in the round of 16, with goals from Ragnar Sigurðsson and Kolbeinn Sigurðsson. They then lost to hosts and later finalists France in the quarter-finals. Following up on this, Iceland made its debut at the 2018 FIFA World Cup. For both the European and the World Championship, Iceland is to date the smallest nation in terms of population to qualify. Iceland is also the smallest country to ever qualify for Eurobasket. They did it in both 2015 and 2017. Although Iceland has had great success qualifying for Eurobasket, they have not managed to win a single game in the European basketball final stages. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, click on like button. If you want to watch more videos like this, click on the subscription button below, it's free subscription.